Hi everyone, it's Eli. You know how sometimes you stumble upon something truly game-changing in healthcare? Well, I found it. KinetiSense. This cutting-edge motion capture technology is transforming movement, assessment, and recovery. Imagine getting instant AI-driven insights without any wearables on your patient. That's right, no ping pong balls needed. Just pure, accurate data. Perfect for boosting athletic performance, pinpointing imbalances, and refining rehab. Top professionals worldwide trust KinetiSense to maximize productivity and results. Check out our partner page to learn more. Experience the revolution in movement. Welcome to Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More, the podcast that gives you a viewpoint in sports medicine that can't be found anywhere else. I'm your host, Eli Hallak, and we have a fantastic show ahead of us today. So, let's get started. Welcome to Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More. I'm your host, Eli Hallak, and today we have a special guest who we've been working on getting here for a couple months. Because of injuries and oopses at both of our facilities, we've had to reschedule a couple times. I'm excited to introduce and talk about his eclectic career, facets across really North America and Asia, where he's been, what he's done, and where he is now. Would like to introduce Erick Chen, athletic trainer at Los Angeles Community College. How you doing, Erick?
Good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad we finally did this. I know we've worked a few times on it, and life and or work has gotten in the way. Appreciate you working with our schedule. You have had just a kind of cool career, man. You really have. Very eclectic, very intriguing, and just the not the ups and downs, but the avenues you've gone left and right. Just really neat. I'd really like to introduce some of our listeners to where you've been, what you've done, and how you got to where you're at now, if you don't mind talking about maybe first your educational background, where you started, and go from there.
My career, as I joke with people, has been very traditionally non-traditional, I guess, to use the current buzzwords. I started undergraduate degree was at Fresno State, got my bachelor's kidney sports medicine, got certified, and then moved back to Southern California, where I'm originally from. Got into graduate school at Long Beach, degrees in kines and sports management, which was also a great program. From there, I started, actually, let me back that up. I guess it kind of started actually when I was at Fresno State. I started pursuing a lot of different avenues because, unlike a lot of my other colleagues, the other students there, who had gained a lot of experience working either transfer from junior college or had high school programs that had sports medicine. This is back, mind you, in the mid 90s. So high school athletic trainers and sports medicine programs were very rare.
Extremely rare back then, yeah.
Yeah, especially down here in Southern California, but in Central California, there was a lot because of the footprint that Fresno State had at the time. So a lot of them came in with literally 1,000 hours. So I rolled in, and then so I started searching for other avenues and looking for experience. That kind of took me down the lane of martial arts. Started working with a lady named Trish Bear, covering Taekwondo events, and then later some judo. And then started working with a company which used to be called UCA UDA, which is now called Varsity, which is all things cheerleading and dance now. So I started my career as with a lot of athletic trainers in their kind of camp administration program. I don't know what it's called now, but just that's that. So finished in 2001, got certified, moved back home, went to Long Beach State, started working in the community college level at East LA Community College. I was there for 1 year as an assistant athletic trainer. And then the following year, moved to Los Angeles Mission College. So all in the same district.
Mission College, really?
Yes. I was an athletic
Wow.
trainer there when they relaunched athletics back in oh 02?
Yep, about that. Now, I can speak to LA Mission College because I actually went there. Half of my family has gone there because I grew up in Sylmar. And I
Okay.
remember before they had a campus, and this is dating me, they would actually, for years, rent out warehouses
Uh-huh.
and rent out conference rooms at different locations.
Yep.
And that's where I had my English class. That's where I would have my art class.
Yep.
In the back warehouse of, God, one was a meeting room. This sounds funny, up at Vaughn's or Ralph's, I forget what it was, in Sylmar. So
The
anyway,
first
just
athletic training room when I got there was in a warehouse. I don't think it's there anymore. I go back and try and find it. I think it's all been redeveloped and knocked down, but it was in a warehouse because that's where the Kines department was. They had
I
their gym
remember that. I
and all that stuff.
remember that. Yeah.
There was a little office in the front, and that became the athletic training room. I
Too
worked out
funny.
of I worked out of the van because the men's soccer team trained at Birmingham High School, which is where
Yep.
we played. The women's soccer team trained at somewhere else. I can't remember off the top of my head, but both teams played at Birmingham High School. And the baseball and softball teams, so we had four sports at a time, 2-2. Baseball and softball both trained and played at El Carrizo Park, which is now adjacent to the current LA Mission College.
So for those of you who don't know, just as the crows fly, to quote my wife, that's about a 12-mile difference from Birmingham High School to El Carrizo Park. So yeah, you got to commute a little bit as an athletic trainer there.
Yeah, so I had this rickety old LA Mission van that my AD made sure was drivable, I guess, and had air conditioning because summer in the valley is not comfortable. But we did that. It was a part-time job, but it was permanent at the time. So that's where I got there. Did that for a year, and then transferred down to LA Harbor College, which is in the South Bay, down in San Pedro, Wilmington area, when a job opened up there. And so I was there for five football seasons. However long that is. And then I had the opportunity. I was hired by Cirque du Soleil, as you mentioned, for a job specifically in China. So this was 2007, 2008, before the pending doom of the world financial crisis, when economy was still high. And so Cirque had plans of Macau. For those of you not familiar, Macau is a big casino town. It was building at the time. So Cirque had visions of reproducing their Las Vegas empire part 2 in Macau. So I was hired for that job. Did that for 4 years. The show closed because we did not sell well. Everybody got cut loose. But then through networks and stuff, I interviewed and was offered a job with a company called United Family Healthcare, which is a big private premium healthcare provider in China. The way I always equate it to people is they're essentially like the Cedar Sinai of China. So think that level.
Got it.
They were a national company within China, but I was in a city in southern China called Guangzhou. And they were expanding into that market, building a hospital, etc. They didn't have a rehab PT department at the time, so I was actually hired to build out and design and operate the PT department and work as a therapist as well. So had the opportunity to move from a clinic to the hospital. So I had a hand in developing and designing the rehab space and help build essentially my little corner of the hospital, which was really nice. And that was one of the things that attracted me to the job, right? As we all know, here in the U.S., somebody as an athletic trainer who doesn't have like an MD or an MBA or JD or something, after their name, doesn't really get that opportunity. So that was fun. Did that for 6 or 7 years, and then moved back to Los Angeles just in time to sit on my butt for a year and a half with COVID. And then
all in the timing, right?
Yeah. And then after that, kind of had an opportunity to develop, picked up where I left off back at the Los Angeles Community College District. Bounced around with some temp jobs, and then the job opened up here at LA City College, which this is going on my 5th season. So, just another rebuild. I think my entire career has been about builds and rebuilds, not specifically planned that way, but that just kind of seems to be how my career track has gone. And that's kind of like the main trunk of my professional career.
You and we had talked about this before. I have kind of a unique insight into part of that professional background that you've talked about, and wanted to dive into that a little bit. We'll get to Cirque du Soleil because that's so unique, and so few people at the time had any thoughts of working in the dance world. But the little bit you did in Guangzhou, so I actually experienced those types of clinics, and we have our youngest we adopted from China.
Oh, yes.
And when we were over in Guangzhou, Guangdong province, correct?
Yes.
Did I get it right?
Yes.
Sometimes I flip that. We were
Yeah.
at Shaman Island for
Mhm.
about a week, if I remember
Yep.
correctly. We were there because that's where the U.S. consulate was, so we were waiting. We were in Nanning for a few days. Yeah, Nanning for a few days, and then Shaman Island for the rest of the week, waiting for the U.S. consulate. And we actually went into one of those clinics.
Mhm.
And the utilization of an athletic trainer at something so specific for such a specific reason was really neat. So, if you could talk about how you were utilized as an athletic trainer and or how you developed the clinics, that would be kind of cool for people to hear.
I wasn't utilized per se an athletic trainer in traditional sense. Really, what they wanted was at the time the company was in a clinic, like trying to build out a hospital. So small thing. But they essentially had gotten tired. The GM was smart. She had gotten tired of referring patients out for physical therapy. So as we know, most of physical therapy in the world, or the most profitable portion is orthopedic, musculoskeletal, some women's health, but primarily based prenatal, postpartum. You can kind of work with from an orthopedic musculoskeletal nature. So essentially, what started is they just wanted to have in-house physical therapy so they could bill for it, right? Increase the bottom line.
Profit, baby. It's all about profits. Yep.
That's private industry. So I was brought in really just to be a therapist and then kind of help build out the department. Naturally, I think as an athletic trainer, we have this intense desire, I guess, from a traditional sense of just make things better, build out, right? We want to be competitive.
So true.
And given my background, it was just kind of second nature for me to like, okay, well, let's build out. And then because I had built out in the past, I've also realized how important it is to get into on the design phase when you're trying to plan things. You don't want to be the end user and not be involved because most times they don't consider it, they don't think about it, or it's just oblivious to them. So for me, for sake thinking long term, I really, and this, athletic trainers, we think long term. I got into the design phase purely just out of not wanting to get screwed.
Because we often do, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and not to say that there's anything wrong. Like my management, my GM administration was really good. They let me get involved as much as I want, and I think that's the advantage working in China, right? There's not like hard set rules. There's no like legal aspects and a lot of things when you get out of the United States. It was more about, and in private industry, it's just about creating a good final product. So that was that. So from there, and then so it was a little bit different for me. I wasn't quite used to because that was my first foray into private industry, on like in terms of like being the service provider and billing, and how kind of the bottom line affects certain decisions in future planning, right? So this is where I refer back to my sports management degree in grad school, right? So it was very much like business oriented, and the program at Long Beach State, because at the time it was taught by working professionals, people who were literal like executives at the Clippers and Staples Center and the Kings and Angels, etc. So they brought a real practical sense to it, and that's what was at least philosophically instilled upon the students. So I had an easier time transitioning to that, which I find sometimes a lot of young athletic trainers may not understand like kind of the finance money aspect of things because it's not something that's taught in our educational programs. In terms of an actual usage, I guess I brought the athletic trainer mindset to it, but I wasn't necessarily in a practical day-to-day operation used as an athletic trainer. It was mostly just standard clinical musculoskeletal, kind of physical therapy. But from there, again, because the mandate of trying to generate revenue, you fall back on what you know. So I started reaching out. We ended up developing a service contract with the Guangdong Provincial Training Center. So I was able to work with provincial level and actually national level athletes for China. Started reaching out, and Guangzhou is a big city. Then we developed a partnership with the WTA because the WTA would have their tour come through, and they were very fed up with their medical service provider because they work through their counterpart with the Chinese Tennis Association, and they would just bring in some doctor from some local hospital, some orthopedic guy. And what I discovered with WTA, I wasn't selling sports medicine. I was selling everything else. They didn't need sports medicine because they travel with their massage therapists, their physios, their ATs, and yada yada yada. What they needed was a bridge into general medicine, right? People get upset stomachs. People get motion sickness, people get viruses, people have allergies, people have, yada, yada, yada. So what I ended up selling them was the clinic. So you've been to the clinics, it's of international staff. So we had doctors who spoke Spanish, Japanese, Russian, Urdu, Hindu, like whatever, right? So that's what actually
I
uh
experienced that. They were awesome. Their
yeah,
their
yeah,
their English was much better than my Chinese. I'll tell you that right now.
yeah. So but it's all the different languages. And when you're dealing with the WTA where you have athletes and staff from all over the world, that was what sold them. And so I sold them as never mind the sports medicine. I know you don't need that other than emergency care. So I sold them one-stop shop on everything else. We got pharmacy, we got whatever, and then they have, their WTA, so they had endless budget. They didn't care what we billed them, which was nice for our GM. Our administration was really happy about that.
I'm sure they were quite thrilled.
Yeah. So yeah, WTA, Guangdong Sports Medicine, traveling tour shows started coming through, right? So I would be like, hey, yeah. So that we didn't really develop anything. That was more of just a network when you get into the producers. So you're on the entertainment side, one producer calls another. And we kind of became more along the lines of, hey, if anything happens, call these guys when you get there. And then, they comp us a couple free tickets and whatever else, but they knew that there was somebody in town that they could call, that they communicate when we got there. So I just started branching out and doing all this stuff. Again, a bit of just bottom line, trying to generate revenue, but also just because that's what we knew, was what I knew. So
And that's what we do oh so often. We often branch out into other avenues as athletic trainers because that's just who we are and what we do. We don't stay in one lane. We go into all five on the
yeah,
405 the middle of the day as quickly as possible
yeah,
when there's no traffic, preferably.
yeah.
Yeah, totally. Now, being in the theater arts and the dance industry, it's a lot more common.
Yes.
My jump or dive in head first didn't start until probably about 2008, 2009 into the dance world. I had no idea what I was getting into, how it would evolve. Prior to starting with the clinics and setting them up and getting them basically going as a mini hospital and people rotating in and out, you got approached by Cirque du Soleil to build out what was in Vegas in basically Macau, going to Asia, and then you ended up in China, and just what an opportunity. So when you got approached to start this potential adventure, what was the first thing that popped into your mind dealing with that potential branch of your life, so to speak?
Once I got offered the job and decided to take it, it was just immediate sheer panic. Was the first
I
reaction.
love it. Panic. Okay.
You got to remember, this is 2007, right? YouTube was just starting. There was no TikTok. X was still, or Twitter was still just, 3 lines of text or whatever it was. So the internet obviously was a thing, and it was all still photos. There wasn't like you could just, see every corner. There was no GPS in terms of like, there was no Google Maps that had 3D everything. So doing research was hard. But I guess you have to back this up a little bit. And this is where, if you can stay with me, the career gets a little bit weird, because the Cirque du Soleil thing, it was a slow boil. It wasn't something that just suddenly happened. So if it kind of needs to go back to when I was in college. I told you I started with martial arts, and I started with the cheerleading and dance. The martial arts, what martial arts taught me was international side, right? Because it was taekwondo, it was judo, and we had a lot of internationals. So that kind of was first exposed to me. And then Trish, her team was very multifaceted. She had nurses and doctors and chiropractors and PTs and ATs and everything. So, and of all different countries in some cases too. So
Really cool in that multidisciplinary setting. That's pretty
yeah,
awesome.
multidisciplinary, multinational. My first event was the US Open, which was this international, it was one of the few international tournaments where you could just show up. It was pay to play. You didn't have to be part of a national team, you didn't have to qualify. You just showed up, pay to fight, and people were trying to make, qualify for Olympics and stuff. Anyways, so Taekwondo was my martial arts, was my international. And then cheer and dance was entertainment, which later led to international. Actually, it kind of came back around, because through cheer and dance, I met some people that furthered my career in entertainment. So one of the athletic trainers I met was also a set medic. So she got me into working, whatchamacallit, she got me working into movie productions and film commercials and stuff for sporting events. And then another one was a PT and dancer. She was the one who ended up getting the job Cirque du Soleil first. And so we kept in touch. And then, I was looking to make a change at Harbor and I started calling out. Early on, it was like, hey, if you see anything, let me know. I had applied, never got a call back. But if you know anything, especially, I speak Chinese, anything in Asia and China, I'd be really interested. And then we kept in contact and eventually said, hey, they're building this show in Macau. So she kind of prompted me through the entire hiring process. And then, she's kind of the one that got me hired. So, but at that time also, I had also done some work with Disney. I'd gotten a job as a per diem athletic trainer at Disneyland. So when the resume lined up with Cirque, I'm sure it all looked, I'd done 7 or 8 years as certified, done some stuff at the pro level, a lot of stuff in entertainment, acrobatics, and had language skills for a show in China. So it kind of, I guess it just lined up, at least on paper, it looked like a good.
All the stars lined up, and you looked like the winner on paper. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but again, it's Cirque, right? So there's still competition. They still had a pool. I wasn't. I'm unique, I guess, in this sense. But when you go globally, a little bit less unique. When you've got 3 spots to fill and you can go through the whole world, it's there's a bit more competition.
That's a good point. Very good point. Yeah, not
So
just local.
yeah. So, but eventually, got hired, took the job, moved out there, and it was, I grew up. I'm second generation, so had a bit of the culture and understood, had the language skills. Although technically in Macau, they predominantly speak Cantonese, which is a slightly different dialect.
And
But
not as oftenly known as the typical Mandarin, correct?
now, yes, in the past, the Cantonese was more the diaspora, so most people understood what they thought was Chinese would have been Cantonese. But now with
Okay.
the rise of mainland China and multimedia and stuff, etc., Mandarin has kind of become understood. Although Mandarin has always been the official national Chinese, lingua franca.
All
So
right, there we go. We got our history lesson in today. Excellent.
yeah. But anyways, yeah, I moved out there. I still remember that first drive down on the taxi ride to the hotel when after getting picked up by the ferry, and I still remember all the lights. And it was kind of again, it's like just imagine like the first time driving down the strip, Vegas, all the lights. And even though I've been to the strip, it was just a very different context. You suddenly realize you're on the other side of the world. But yeah, it was sheer panic initially. What am I doing? And then when I got there, I suddenly realized, to be honest with you, I was a bit out of my depth. They had assembled a crack performance medicine team. I mean, like it was Australians, Canadians. I mean, these people, like all of a sudden I realized, oh, shnikes, I'm low man on the totem pole again. You realize what I didn't realize at the time was that as a very kind of classical traditional athletic trainer, West Coast traditional athletic trainer, we're very strong in emergency rescue skills, emergency planning, and all that. When the something hits the fan, we're really good at that. Rehab skills, mid 90s, not so much.
Yeah.
I thought I was pretty good because I had gone on, I took, extra training, worked with so many different therapists, manual skills, exercise based, different programs. I thought I was pretty good. And then I showed up with the team at Zaya, which is the name of the show at Cirque. And I was like, no, like these people could work some magic. And I suddenly realized this is a whole different world. Ironically enough, fortunately, by the grace of God, we had several emergency situations happen, as what does with new shows and new productions. And I just happened to be the one on shift every time. So it kind of made me, you lean back on what you know and kind of helped you, look a little bit better. But it was a big growing phase. And then dealing with people, different styles. And that's when you realize you really, like we talk about, it's a talking point about, having an open mind until you get there and you suddenly realize how closed your mind is to a lot of things. And it wasn't just the medical side. It was, again, I came in with so many preconceived notions that were just not what I thought it was. Right. I thought I knew entertainment, not at that level. I thought I knew rehab. I thought I knew healthcare, not at that level. Right. It literally felt like to me, I suddenly realized like going from the junior college and jumping straight into like the NFL or the NBA. Because that's what Cirque was at the entertainment level. It's big corporate at the time, endless budget, but high quality. Demands are very high quality and very intense. So I had just enough to get me in, to get me hired. But then it was a lot of treading water and just fast pace, and everything was just going to try and keep my head above water in that world. So, but it was a lot of fun. It was a big growing experience, but it was a lot of fun.
And I'm sure with that network of colleagues around you, that probably really assisted your clinical skills in developing, growing, whether it was manual skills or whatever, in the areas that I know I was lacking when I came out of college in the early 90s, mid 90s. Like you
Yes.
said, boy, I'm still nails with emergency medical. But my first gig, I'll never forget it. I came out PT clinic thinking I knew everything. That first day I went home, pulled out my books and went, "Oh my God, I got to study rehab. I don't know anything."
Oh, it was so bad for me. I had to go back and break out anatomy books, like just to make sure I knew exactly what I was like. The fundamentals had to like. That's what I tell students now is learn the fundamentals. Like once you have the fundamentals, like you can build on that. It may seem scary, but you can always build on that. And, I worked with Australians, and Australians have really strong manual skills, manual
Oh
therapy skills.
yes. Oh yes.
But the head therapist, the department head, I mean, I would say even amongst Australians, she had like just ridiculous, like, skills. And then the Canadians I work with, I mean, you talk about people who think outside the box. I had one guy I worked with, and we had this discussion. And so I was like, "Hey, Rick, what are you inside the box or outside the box?" To him, he's just like, "What box?" Like there was no box.
I love that. I love that. There was no box.
But again, it's different philosophy, different styles, and when you meet, and that's what the diversity, and that's why I think that's why old senior athletic trainers from previous
Well,
eras were like,
well seasoned. Well seasoned. Let's
you
go with
know,
well seasoned. That makes me feel
uh,
better.
yeah, and even like the alumni now, they're always saying networking. What is the reason for networking, right? Because you meet different people, different philosophies, different styles, different mindsets, different sets of experiences, right? You're not closed down anymore. And that's what that experience got for me. So now, it was funny after coming back and you go through interviews and you get that question of, okay, so please share some of your experiences about working with people from diverse cultures and religions and genders and this, and I'm just like, uh, they have the standard answer that they're looking for, but that's such a loaded question for me now because it's so hard to explain. How do you condense 10 years of experience into like a three minute soundbite in an interview? So
That would be difficult for me too. I don't think I could do it.
yeah, but anyway, sorry, what was the original question? Oh yeah, that Macau. Sorry.
Macau. That's all good. It's all good. I love the direction we went there. Don't even worry about that original question. I love what we
Yeah.
got into there. Elevate your knowledge, ignite your curiosity, and compete with the best minds at events hosted by the American Academic Competition Institute. AACI's sports medicine competitions feature practical exercises, challenging quizzes, specialty tests, and keynote speakers that foster knowledge and social engagement in healthcare and sports medicine. Go to aacitest.org for more information on upcoming regional and national competitions. Sign up for the ultimate intellectual showdown.
So I mean, literally so I ended football season. Classic junior college football season, bumps and bruises, banging and this, and then 3 months later, it's people flying through the air. So
Which bumps and bruises a little bit bigger sometimes flying through the air.
yeah, and
Definitely.
then we go back to emergency. We talk about EAPs and stuff, and yeah, you're trying to create and literally. So that's a great thing about Cirque and their performance medicine program because they've been around for so long. They literally have EAPs for everything. But at the time, our show was also new. It was more technical than most of the shows that Cirque had at the time, and so we had to create EAPs. And so for us as traditional athletic trainers, you think, okay, a head injury, head, neck, or spine. How do you roll with helmet and gear and et cetera, et cetera? The next thing becomes the EAP. Okay, you got an artist who collided with another artist dangling from hardware 30 feet up in the air. Go. uh,
What do we do? Yeah, there's an
right.
EAP.
And so So that's where, like, when we suddenly realize, but again, this is our flexibility and adaptability. You suddenly realize as a medical staff, we have certain limitations, right? You are not going to dangle me 30 feet up in the air because I am petrified of heights and trying to do an emergency rescue. So what does that mean? Then you got to involve your technical staff. That means you got to involve your riggers. You got to involve your carpenters. You got to involve automation, right? Because if they're dangling in the air, because our show is heavily automated. So you had your automation guys. And so the EAP, whereas in sports, you got your doctors and your therapists and your nurse and maybe your EMTs and maybe your local hospital. Now you suddenly had to involve dozens of different people from half a dozen different departments, and everybody has to be trained. Everybody, and not only do we have to train them on medical, they have to train us on technical, how to undo gear.
That's true. Wow.
Right?
And gear we've never thought about. Yeah.
What is a safe space that we can stand below equipment, right? So this is industrial, right? So now people think like Cirque du Soleil, it's very like, oh, entertainment, song and dance and stuff. But the thing that you don't understand about Cirque is it's also very, very industrial, depending on the show that you're on. But our show was very, very mechanical. So we had a lot of moving parts. All right. So those big stage shows now have a lot of moving parts. And you've been backstage at a in shows and stuff. But I think in traditional theater and dance, the tech, everything comes in rigged, ready to go. There's usually not too many moving set pieces. And if there are, it's mostly just the carpenters, pushing big set pieces off and around. But even there, it goes to industrial, right? What is a safe space to stand? You got to understand.
So true. So true.
Who's moving where, right? So that's a part of entertainment. I think a lot of people don't think about is the industrial safety side of things. So that was also new for me.
And in the mid 90s, that was, well, towards the end of the early 90s, that was new for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, by the time I got to Cirque, this was 2008 when I moved took a job at Cirque. Their performance medicine team, the department had been around for a while. It was more stabilized. They had done the global stuff that they were touring, but still, I think we learned a lot because ours was one of the most technical shows in the company at the time. We had a lot of moving pieces. So,
out of curiosity, what was the name of the show? Do you remember?
Zaya, Zaia.
Zaya.
Yeah, so you can go on YouTube and you can search it and you'll see the old highlight reels and stuff, and you can kind of see, we had fire and we had dancing and we had aerial, we had trapeze, we had X board, trampoline, teeter board. Yeah, there's a bunch of different things going on.
A little bit of everything. Oh boy, that's a lot of EAPs.
Tell me about it. By the time we closed, we had not finished writing EAPs.
Wow. I mean, I remember seeing Ka up in Vegas for Cirque du Soleil, and when that stage tilts up, my immediate thought was, oh my God. Yep. The work that goes into that one alone for EAPs and treatment and anything, God forbid, happens, which unfortunately once it did. But oh my goodness.
That's the thing. When you go to those types of shows, what the audience sees versus what's backstage is very, very different. Like our stage, we had a very high, like visually, we had a very high stage, right? It went up probably like 50, 60 feet, I would say, from what you could see in the house. But then above that, we had 2 grids above that. And then stage level going down because we had elevators, spinning elevators for set pieces. So from stage level down to the basement floor was probably another 40 feet. So from the very top of the grid, and it was actually kind of, so for somebody who was scared of heights, working on the grid was creepy. It took a while to figure it out. But if you were at the right part of the grid, you could look straight down when the elevators were down and you could see the basement floor. And you're talking what, like 90 feet, 95 feet from standing where we're grid to the basement floor. So the industrial side, when you consider fall risks, right? And so it's like the things that you don't see, like we had to create, well, not us, but the show artistic director, we had characters dancing around open elevators on the stage with a 40-foot drop.
Oh my God.
Right? Because the set pieces would go down, they would do whatever to reload the elevator and come back. Meanwhile, on stage, there's still people flipping and dancing and stuff. So this is all part of the safety concerns when I say the industrial side of entertainment that a lot of people don't consider.
Oh my. So
Yeah.
many things can have to go right for something not to go wrong,
Yeah, but that's the magic that you don't see.
nor are you supposed to. So
But
when everything goes well, nobody knows.
yeah, yeah, or even when things don't go well, the show goes on. Just because somebody has an injury, right? You work in entertainment now,
Oh yeah.
and that's why I said there's so many moving pieces. There's the communication because, and this is why I think athletic trainers thrive because we're used to communicating, we're used to making calls, right? Where you maybe you come from other healthcare service industries, you're not used to working in that multi-dynamic facility or activity, right? So we're used to having EAPs, and so you got to let stage management know because they got to make a decision: are we going to stop the show? If they don't stop the show, how do they modify? And then that's got to transfer down to the artists so they know where their cues are, what changes, is music going to change? Because we have live music too. Cirque has live music. So the musicians have to know, hey, are we going to skip this? Are we not going to skip this? And like, there's so many moving parts in a big stage production like that. And honestly, it's easier if they just stop the show. You play some background music.
That would
You
be
just,
fantastic. That's the easy way out, but that ain't going to
yeah,
happen. Show never stops.
unless it's something really bad, like no, you don't stop. And honestly, even if it was really bad, we've had really bad injuries, but it happened backstage, or we're able to drag them off, kind of like sometimes military style. If it's not a head, neck, or spine, you kind of stabilize them. You can pull them off stage, and we deal with everything backstage. But then now everybody's got to know, like, hey, don't go into this corner of the stage because there's a bunch of this stuff going on.
Yeah, been there,
So
done that. It always unique situation when that happens backstage, trying to keep the show going, but at the same time not interrupting anybody that needs to keep the show going while
sorry if I'm
taking care of the patient.
reading a little bit, but it's crazy.
No, it's all good. This is great, man. Great stuff. Great stuff.
So when we were in China at the time, this was 2012 to 19, 2012 when I started, when I ended Cirque and then moved over. Believe it or not, there were dozens of athletic trainers floating around China, literally dozens, because this was when leading up and just post, the Beijing Olympics, right?
Oh, yes,
Or,
yes.
and this is the post-economic, crash. So when China's and Asia's economy was running really hot, there's a lot of money flowing through. So they wanted to become competitive in athletics. So they were bringing all kinds of foreign therapists, coaches, performance coaches, skills coaches, etc. Athletic trainers got picked up in the mix. So I don't know if you're aware at the time, but the Chinese Olympic Committee, there were jobs floating on the NATA website for athletic trainers. They were trying to bring in athletic trainers, and I started getting calls because I still remember the job description was like 1 to 2, 3 years of experience, graduate, certified, the standard bit, and they were offering like $50,000, and they threw out the number 70 spots to fill. I was
Holy
getting
mackerel.
calls. I was getting calls from the U.S. and they're like, "Is this real?" And I looked at, I'm like, "Yeah, sounds about right." I mean, that's small. That's small potatoes, for the Chinese government. So a lot of those people coming in. There was a company called IWS, Institute of Western Surgery. They were an American company that was partnering with University of South Carolina, the other USC, and they were doing they were calling internships. It was kind of that old Health South model. You bring in athletic trainers, you embed them in this case international schools, and then you would pipeline back for medical services. So that was a big program. There was other athletic trainers just randomly floating around, and so we started getting together. There was this whole community, and then biggest challenge at the time was CEUs, right? We couldn't get CEUs because back then online CEUs was, here's this article, read it, do this 10 question quiz. You could email your answer back now, pay your fee, and then they'd send you your CEUs, right? There wasn't all this digital and videos and this, that, and whatever else.
Nowhere near as good or as simple as it is today. Definitely.
Yeah. So
I remember those.
and we started putting on a conference, and we started, collecting. Everybody started leveraging their networks, and this ended up, and we got somebody knew Mueller. So big shout out to Mueller Sports Medicine, and Brett. They gave us some money as a sponsorship, and we put together a conference, and it's been going ever since, minus a couple of years in COVID, right? So we organize ourselves as athletic trainers do. It's now called the Asia Pacific Athletic Trainer Society, so apats.org. Yeah, apats.org. It's a great group. Keep building. I've just learned recently the incoming The next incoming chair of the NATA International Committee is one of our members, Jennifer Rizzo, who is now one of the administrators, actually down at Orange Lutheran High School.
Oh, yes, I remember Jen. She used to be the director at, oh, what university? Was it Concordia for a while?
Yeah, she was at Concordia. So
Yeah.
that we met in China. She was out there at Shanghai. What was it? Concordia Shanghai. So I think it was the same church affiliation or organization, the Concordia Shanghai International School. We met there, and she's the incoming chair for the NATA International Committee. APATS has now also, we're going to be partnering with JADO actually. So at JADO's next conference in the spring, we're going to be working on a group presentation. So we're working on that together, And it's crazy. Like we've been there, and there's so many groups that are coming in. That Hong Kong apparently has developed a athletic training group as well.
Awesome. I did not know that.
Yeah, so I would encourage anybody. There's a lot of opportunities out there. It doesn't have to just be the United States. It doesn't just have to be Latin America or whatever else. There's a lot of other options out there. But I encourage you, look up APATS, apats.org. There's a lot of things, and we're just slowly growing. Actually, some of the people I've met here in the U.S. we've convinced to go out there and take some jobs and stuff. Most of the people in our organization are in international schools, but there's a few different people bouncing around, so it's a lot of fun. And we did that as a side gig to our main job. Still try to be active in all of that.
That's great. That's great. I'd forgotten about that. We had discussed that a while back. That's awesome. And just shows how so many of us want to have that network nearby. And when you don't have it, why not create it?
It goes back to, you hear the old stories of the original NATA, right? It's leveraging resources, right? So they work at these entities now that for the most part are much well funded. They don't necessarily have the funding issues, but you have the access issues. Like, where do you get tape? If it wasn't for Mueller, like where do you just get tape in your basic first aid supplies?
Little shout out to Ginger Mueller over there at Mueller Products, of course.
Ginger and Brett, they've been great. And it also became like, hey, when you're traveling to different cities, right? It's the same thing. It's what athletic trainers have always done. Hey, I'm going to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Like, do you have somebody out there in case I need, XYZ, whatever else? I was like, oh yeah, okay, call, this guy or this gal, and they'll set you up. And that's what it was. Because some of our members, it's not as dense. We have members out in the Philippines. We have members in Vietnam. So where it started in Greater China, it was mostly just mainland China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Macau. We have members in all throughout Southeast Asia now, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Philippines, and couple different places. And it's just leveraging resources. How do you get resources? How do you get? What do you do when your tape gets moldy? What do you do when you can't get Band-Aids? What do you do when, how do you get through airport security with certain tools or modalities that we use? There's all of that stuff too, and that's been great for that organization and the membership out there. So
that's awesome. So always really neat to hear how somebody develops a network, grows a network, or in your case, just says, what the heck, let's create something new. And really intriguing. It's so common to our field because we just, again, we don't stay in one lane. We go into five, and we swerve around till we get where we need to go to and take care of everybody in the process. We've gone through this tour in China and Asia, and just what an experience that is. And then you kind of close that circle and you end up back in California at the community college level again. And that had to be just a really intriguing, interesting, yet fun time, because you're coming back to something closer to home, something more traditional, but at the same time, something you hadn't been around in a while. What was that experience like coming back into a traditional setting?
Yeah, it ended up becoming a little bit of a hobby journey, because originally my plan, I wasn't planning to be out there for 13 years or whatever it was. My original plan, I was going to try and just be out there for like maybe a year and a half too. My original thought was apply for Cirque, get a job, and then laterally transfer back to the U.S. But obviously that didn't happen. It's different. It was familiar and yet different. It's like when you go, it's literally the same thing as like moving back to the U.S. Or moving back to L.A. in that it's very familiar. In all honesty, not that much has changed from when I left. Well, actually, I can't say that. That's not fair. I don't know if it's not much has changed or it's just because my perception is different because I've changed so much. So there is that. I don't think it's fair to say, all the athletic trainers are working so hard to grow and develop while, I was gone. I think it's just my perspective has changed so much. To me, it seems like less less dramatic, if you will. But it's all very familiar. It's all very comfortable. I still remember when I started, actually, I didn't come, when I first came back to the district, I was temping at LA Valley College. This was still the COVID, right? So when they had those COVID jobs, those
Oh,
COVID
yes.
jobs.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So that's what I got hired on as a temp. So actually, I just, right back into football, American football. I hadn't covered American football in 6 or 7 years at that point. It was actually funny because I did cover an American football event while I was in China. It was one of my outreaches. The NFL marketing had been making pushes into China, and they had a tournament, like full contact tournament. Actually, this is really funny.
Oh, wow.
So we had contract, my company at the time had contracted the NFL to provide medical services. And I'm sitting there on the sideline of a football game, full contact, pads and everything, sitting there thinking, man, I haven't done football in like 5 years. So I'm running through my head. Okay, so what do I do in a spine injury? What do I do? How do we do this? How do we do that? Da, da, da. And then literally at the end, I had a kid just goes down, just smack head to head, unconscious. And we had to do this whole spine board thing and equipment and everything in a foreign country with people I hadn't trained with. You got to remember this. I hadn't trained, football in a while.
Right.
Fortunately for me, I was also the lead person for doing all the emergency training when I was at Cirque. So all the spine boarding stuff had become, second nature, but I still remember that. What are the odds, like not having that, and then all of a sudden this kid goes down out cold, literally out cold, eyes rolled back, not,
Oh, my
not
God.
breathing.
Oh, my God.
He came around after 5 seconds, and so it wasn't a full-on emergency. And then, trying to work in the Chinese ambulance, and then coming back to Valley College, it was interesting how it was just came back so naturally. Right, the mentality, you go back, you have your pre-practice, you have your practice, you have your different skills. I was honestly surprised at how naturally ankle taping had come back.
Really?
Yeah, because in Cirque, you don't really do the standard, white ankle American tape job.
Not at all. Ever.
Yeah, we'll tape a little bit differently for that world. I had done a little bit, I was in China covering a few events, but so for however long I was in college, you do Friday night, Saturday night football for X number of years, and then the practices. But then I was out of it for 12, 13 years. So that was the thing that was so shocking. Just like it's just mindless. It's just mindless. You play the music and just go, right. 30 guys, later, and 60 pairs of ankles later. Okay, you're done. Everybody go out to practice or go out to games.
Muscle memory, baby.
Yeah, that was the thing that kind of caught me off guard. Same thing, working the sideline. How natural it was, even though I hadn't, like I said, I hadn't done football in 12, 13 years, but there's just certain things like how you stand, where you stand, your field of vision. That mentality just kind of came back real quick. The sideline hadn't changed much, at least at the JC level.
It hasn't really changed much at the high school level either, so I think we're good.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe it was just because it was so intense. When I was going at Harbor, there was a lot of things going on. Again, it was a rebuild. They had gone through, a lot of different changes. And so there was a lot of intensity trying to build, and everything was just 100 miles an hour every day for like 3 years before my partner and I, Bill, had kind of settled that program down and kind of rebuilt it a bit. But it was just, stuff was just like ingrained into your head, right? Okay, Monday is dock night, and then Tuesdays is soccer games, and then Wednesday is full contact football. Thursdays is football, and you're prepping basketball and soccer. Fridays is game day for volleyball and soccer and walk through. It's just all this. It just came back like really naturally. I was kind of surprised at how quickly all that stuff came back. So I did that for a couple months, and then the LA job, LA City College job opened up. At the time, it was only 2 sports. It was men's and women's soccer. Uh,
That's an easy gig right there.
yeah, well, it was and it wasn't. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I keep saying it's not the job that I wanted, but it was the job that I needed. I think Rob, the AD here, has done a really good job of hiring good staff. People of good character who brought in staffs, assistant, coaches of
That's fantastic. That's
good
always
character,
good.
and we recruited athletes for the most part, of good character. Right? We don't deal with people with poor attitudes. They're 18 to 20-year-olds, so you deal with the immaturity and childishness at times, but nobody who's been overtly problematic. You know,
That's good.
um, Coming out of COVID, we were funded very well, so it feels like all the experiences I kind of collected and built over the years was funneled into this program. I was able to use because we didn't have to scrimp and save because we were a starter program. Our VP at the time funded us well. Our AD was able to get good funding. I had a good facility. The previous athletic trainer who was here had designed a pretty good facility. Unfortunately, he never got to use it because the program went dormant. So it kind of felt like, when I just had two sports, you say, oh, yeah, it's easy, right? It's easy and it's not. It's easy for the fact if I just wanted to clock in, go cover practice and games and leave, you could do that. But for me, it was like I treated it more like going back to kind of like at the higher levels, right? Okay, so this is my focus now. I've got 60 people, 50, 60, whatever it was at the time to deal with. So then you're just hovering, you're just constantly around. How do we get better? How do I support the staff? How do we do this? How do we do that? Because, fortunately, unlike most athletic trainers, I didn't have to worry about, whether I was going to get paid overtime or burnout, all this stuff, because I knew it was like once we get through the fall, then the winter and the spring, like I could just be gone. I wouldn't care, right? Because there's nothing going on. So if I had to work, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, it wouldn't matter because I knew I'd pick it up on the back end.
It all evened out at that point. But now at this point, we have more than just a couple sports at LA City College.
Yeah. So we ended up growing into volleyball and basketball. And right now it's just basketball because in the junior college world, soccer and volleyball in the fall. So they've all done. Our men's soccer team had a really good run, made it to the state Final Four. Didn't make it to the finals, but so it ran a little bit longer. But now it's just basketball. So things are much calmer, right? So I know if I have to work extra time, I recognize I'm one of the few fortunate athletic trainers in this world. I don't mind working the extra time because I know on the back end it all balance out. Now the great thing is then when you have this much in focus on it, you can build. It allowed me to build a great relationship with the coaches, right? You build a great rapport. You have great communication. You get to be around the athletes all the time, from beginning to end. You don't have to like sit there and figure out as much like how do I manage my hours. At least for me, this is my philosophy. I'm not a guy that necessarily feels like I need to clock in at noon and leave at 8. It's a little bit more, I guess, old school tradition. But it's also I'm in a system where that's not abused either, right? I think it becomes a lot of issues where athletic trainers get abused or their positions get abused. And so I recognize I'm in a very fortunate position. The AD is great. He's built a great staff, right? Me included. I think, he's done a good job hiring. So we've got a really good department. And it's just like, here you go, do your job, right? The coaches, they coach, they do their job. We've discussed this before. In this setting, it's the only time in my career I've never had a coach overtly go behind my back. And
you just made a lot of people jealous real quick right there.
I know, there's sometimes, there's the miscommunication, and I'll claim that, maybe the email wasn't written correctly, or maybe, something got lost in translation. So you have things like that. But I've never had coaches that, as far as I know here, I've never gone behind my back, but okay, don't listen to Erick. Oh, you're going to go do this. You're going to go do, no. That has not happened before. You have your disagreements, you hash it out in private, right? I hate it. I've seen athletic trainers and staff and whatever, they get pulled into confrontations, not necessarily always their fault, but sometimes their fault by coaches. And it's like, no, that's not how you do things, right? So we hash it out in private and we come to a consensus, whether it has to be a compromise or sometimes somebody has to draw a firm line, and then you move forwards. Now, consequently, the result of this, I also give my coaches a lot more leeway, because if I know they're not going to purposely go out and screw me or screw the athlete over, right? Because we all know there's staff out there too will try to gain for their own benefit with shady practices. But I'm confident the coaches will not purposely go behind my back or try and screw the athletes over. I'm apt to give them more leeway. I don't know how many times I've talked to athletes, I've talked to coaches. Okay, well, this is what their restrictions are. They can't do X, Y, Z. Beyond that, you guys go figure it out. Right? Happy to let you guys try. I've never done that in the past, but I think it's because we're in a good space here, and I think that my career has allowed me to develop proper procedures and to have confidence in myself and confidence in my coaching staff that I'm more apt to do that now. So it's a very, I understand it's a very unique situation, and I'm grateful for it.
Part of it comes down to, like you said earlier, communication, balance, but then those personal relationships that you've created with both the coaches, the student athletes, so
Yeah.
that there's the trust that's been built so you can work together as a team. And that's really what it is. It's not a us versus them thing. At that point, it's teamwork, and everybody understands we're there together as a team to help each
Mhm.
other. I think that's the goal of all of us as athletic trainers, to develop those relationships where it's a team mentality, where it is a group and we function as one, which again, little jealous. That's really awesome. Not
But
everybody is so fortunate.
yeah, but part of it also comes with experience because I feel like young athletic or young anything profession, right? We always say we value communication, this, that, but we don't necessarily know how to communicate. I know for me early on, I couldn't necessarily relate to a lot of different types of people. I couldn't necessarily understand where they were coming from. I was, and going back, when I first moved around, I thought I was open minded. I may have philosophically wanted to be open minded, but in reality, in practice, I don't think I was.
Maturity goes a long way. Yeah.
Yeah, so you learn, and this just comes, you got to take your lumps, right? The reps, you rep things out, and you learn how to talk to people in the same way we learn how to tape an ankle. We learn how to do, joint moves, or we learn how to do certain things. So sometimes it just takes time. And so I'm at a point now where it's fortunate that even though I can meet people that where we have no, in reality, no common background per se on face value. But as you keep talking, you're looking for that commonality. You're constantly looking, you're learning how to communicate because a lot of times in human interaction, that's what it is. You're looking for something that you can have in common. And instead of being so quick to dismiss, like, oh well, I have nothing in common with this guy from Zimbabwe, or in the same way, or I have nothing in common with this kid from Mexico who may not speak English. No, people are humans. There's always something that you can find in common. Whether it's a preference
So
for
true.
sports or a
So
preference
true.
in
Yeah.
food or some like crazy grandma story, like something.
So true. And that's what it is. We just need that one little moment and it clicks.
Yeah.
Very true. But I got one more question I'd love to ask you and have you answer. If you could look back at yourself or even look at a younger colleague and give them a piece of advice, what would that advice be right now?
Two things: learn the fundamentals. You build your foundation, you can build everything off of that. Doesn't matter what you do. Second of all, sometimes you just got to let things happen. When we're young, it feels like we're always trying to control our destiny. To some extent, you can influence the path that you go, but there are other times things are just going to happen, and sometimes you kind of just got to let it happen. Sometimes that means taking some lumps. As long as you learn from them, you'll be all right. But yeah, sometimes you kind of just gotta let things happen. You
Just
know,
got to roll with whatever unfolds in front of you.
yeah. And some people, for different people that comes out differently. Like I know you work at a faith based school with the Catholic Church. People relate that to religion. Other people want to be that's the forces of the universe, whatever. But sometimes, yeah, you learn the fundamentals, and then sometimes you just gotta let things happen because they are going to, regardless of whether or not you want to.
And I couldn't agree with you more on that because although we think we're in control, we're usually not. You do have to learn how to just go with whatever unfolds in front of you. Eric, man, fun to talk again. Always fun to talk with you. I look forward to seeing you back over on campus, LACC, sometime. Thank you for being on our show today. Hopefully, everybody got some good information and you learned a little something. I know I did. Wanted to thank you for being on Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More. Thanks a lot, buddy. We'll see you next time, okay?
Thank you.
Have a good one. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Want to make sure you hear every episode? Remember to like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast. Don't forget to share our podcast with your colleagues, family, and friends. Your support will help more people find and enjoy our content. Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More is directed by Eli Hallak. It is produced by Gabriel Hallak. Our theme music is by Coma Studios via Pixabay. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely those of the contributors. Want to know more about us? Visit us at wrapituppodcast.com. That's with one P, wrapituppodcast.com. Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More is a production of Hallak Consulting, LLC.